Well, hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this Founders Call. My name's Roger McFarland. I'm one of the co-founders here at Green Flower, and I have the rest of the riffraff on the phone. Jess Scarborough and Rich Carey, two of our illustrious leaders. Why don't you say hi to the people, guys?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Rich Carey here.
Jess Scarborough.
Hey, thanks for taking some time out of your day. We wanted to take just a moment and talk about our strains line, just to give people a little bit of information about what a strain is, answer some of the FAQs, I know that we all get. But before we do that, I thought it'd be cool, since we just spent quite a bit of time getting the new product launch, and last week we launched the 250 milligram vape cartridges that are all in that, strains line. There's 11 different terpene flavors. And so thought maybe you'd just like to give us a brief description of that since you let out on that, Rich.
Sure, Roger. So we've, of course, carried some of our VG products come in the top 10 strains flavors, and then the natural hemp being number 11. Those products have been really selling well because people do like to explore those different medical marijuana profiles, and we'll talk about that in more detail as we go. But we really felt like it was important for us to move into the CBD vape market. And the CBD vaporizer pens, what really caught the first time I think that it really jumped out at me was when I was watching it was a documentary, a medical cannabis documentary, and there was an MMA fighter that was on the program. It's actually 3 athletes that were being interviewed, and they were being interviewed about their use of CBD to treat their pain. And this MMA fighter, he's retired, and you can tell he's, kind of beat up, and, he's had his share of injuries in the ring. And he said something that just made me sit right up in my chair. He said, I was taking all kinds of different drugs, opioids and all kinds of things, trying to manage this chronic pain that I have from these old injuries. And one day somebody came up and handed me a CBD vape pen, and he said, and I took a few tokes off of that pen, and he said, I felt pain relief wash over my body like I hadn't experienced in years. And he said I was just completely blown away. And I was watching this, and I was thinking about, of course, all of our products, and I thought we really should develop a CBD vape pen. So we kind of launched into that arena. We had some 100 milligram pens that were out there, and with a few different test strains, and they sold really well, and we got great feedback. But we knew that we could probably get a little bit closer to the mark in terms of our potency levels, and we wanted to go ahead and integrate all of our strains into the different terpene profiles into our vapes. So that's what we did, and so we've now got 250 milligrams of CBD in a 0.5 ml cartridge, and they come in all 11 strain flavors, and we're very excited about that.
I was going to interject there too, as well, as that it's not that the oral tinctures are don't work or of less effectiveness. It's just a faster onset with the vape pen, and you have less physical barriers to overcome, if you will. And so most people actually are able to feel that much faster than if they do the oral tinctures.
Now, we're probably going to do a separate call having to do with just vaporizers and vaporizing versus tincture versus capsules and all those. Sure. Well, we'll get into absorption and all that kind of stuff. But just real quick, 2 questions. One, so what do you think that onset difference is? Like how quick using a vape pen versus maybe using a tincture? What do you think that difference is?
Well, for me personally, I know that I feel it immediately versus doing it orally. You may take I don't know, sometimes the onset of that can be as much as 10, 15 minutes. It depends on, what you've had to eat. It depends on how diluted the product is, different things like that. But for me personally, I feel an instantaneous onset with the vaporizer versus with the with oral. And, again, everybody's going to be different. Every person is going to be different. But it's been interesting to me to watch people actually who have never used a vape pen before to actually take that first hit, as we call it, and watch them say, their shoulders drop, their jaw open, all this tension seems to just instantly go away, and they go, wow, I felt that,
Yeah. Okay, so in the last month or so, as Rich has been doing his mad scientist work in conjunction with you, Jess, we've all been getting different samples and things. We are our own lab rats to a large degree, So just real quick, do any of you have a favorite among the 11 flavors?
Roger, to answer that, just as as personal as I can, my family likes Granddaddy Purple. That seems to be our go-to for multiple things. That's the one we like the flavor of the best. That's the one that we find the best results with, and that's usually just you can't really say it's particularly anything specific. It might just be stress reduction. It might just be I've dealt with chronic headaches. It seems to really knock a headache out for me personally. So those are some things for my family that we look at the product. Again, that Granddaddy Purple is the one that we kind of go to first. We like it. When I put my own personal orders in, that's the one I'm going for.
I like that one too. So far, Rich probably can guess what I'm going to say, but I really like the OG Kush. And I think, all of them, they bring, I think for me anyway, all of them kind of bring the juice from a standpoint of, the overall effects, that real calm thing you're talking about, and just that nice little zone and focus and everything. And, of course, the medicinal reasons why each of us may be taking it. So, the OG Kush for me, it is kind of a flavor thing. They all taste good, but that's just particularly tasty to me. So not much reason beyond that, I don't guess. But about you, Mr. Carey, you have a favorite?
Yeah, I think that I'm also, I did a lot of early experimentation with OG Kush because I really like I guess more of a natural cannabis type flavor that it has, and it seems to blend real well with the terpenes that are in our natural, our full spectrum oil. We do have a certain terpene profile that we're starting with. It's not completely tasteless, which is why I actually like the natural hemp flavor pretty well too. But OG Kush is definitely there. Because I've been in formulation mode, I've sat and tried them all, and it really kind of depends on what mood I'm in, that if I feel like a little blueberry, well, Blue Dream just fits the bill, and a little grapey, Granddaddy Purple definitely has those flavors, and they're not artificial flavors. These are literally just plant terpenes. So cannabis is an amazing little chemical factory that produces all these incredible little chemicals. So Watermelon Kush seems to be, a real popular one. And one of my sons came over and my daughter-in-law last night, and they were trying some of the earlier samples that I've still got laying around, and they both really like the Watermelon Kush. So that's really surprised me out of the gate. A lot of people jumped right on that. So Tahoe OG also, that's a good one too. But Jet Fuel is actually also a very good daytimes, very alerting kind of strain. Yeah. And so anyway, it's hard to
we
pick
have a
lot
favorite,
of our, but definitely OG Kush is there.
Along those lines, we'll begin to kind of shift over into the strain. So if you're listening to the call, you're already hearing maybe what might be kind of foreign. Some of you may be familiar with medical marijuana strains, and others, it may all be Greek and new to you. So, we've mentioned OG Kush, we've mentioned Granddaddy Purple and Tahoe OG, and, of course, Watermelon Kush, and all these really interesting names. And so I want to shift over into, a conversation about what these strains really are, what it is we're actually doing, how it kind of compares to where we're borrowing the names from, which are from the medical marijuana strains, how our stuff is a little bit different. But before I shift over into that, I want to highlight one point that Rich just made, is that what's always been amazing to me about the strains, whether we're talking about our 100-milligram tinctures or even now the new vape cartridges, which, by the way, we have 500 milligram coming soon, so be on the lookout for that. But the thing I always found really amazing is that everything in that bottle is 100% natural. There's no artificial flavor, so these things are so flavorful, and they're so, tasty to the palate. But what I've always found that was really neat is there's not a bit of artificial flavoring in that at all. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's the real thing that blew my mind when I started into. I don't have a big cannabis history here with all these strains and stuff. My level of cannabis experience was back in the 70s when we knew what country it was from pretty much. But
right.
When it came down to strains, that's a newer invention for me. So when I began to really start to dig into the chemistry of the plant and look at the chemical profiles, which really is the amazing thing about cannabis is the fact that they produce all these terpenes and the different cannabinoids we feel the effects of. The terpenes we do too, but terpenes are the most abundant chemical found in nature, naturally. In when you look at the overall plant world,
so they're in everything. They're not just in. Yeah, they're not just in cannabis. Their terpenes are everywhere. Right. They're in all plant material, right?
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah,
but cannabis produces them in higher levels than most other plants. That's I think among the highest levels, and that's one of the reasons why it's such an exciting field of study, because these terpenes have their own ability to produce an effect, and so all of our strains, when you're tasting these undertones of berry flavors, fruity flavors, or piney flavors, those are all produced by chemicals that are found in nature. They're not artificial flavorings at all.
Wow. So let's kind of dive into then what a strain is, and I want to direct the conversation just a hair here by introducing or reintroducing to the conversation some nomenclature that everyone has seen by now if you've been on the Green Flower site at all, which is this term full spectrum. So our oils are full spectrum hemp oils, full spectrum CBD oils, and that full spectrum has a very important meaning for what we're doing. And I think without it, we can't even use the word strain. So they kind of interlock in together. So why don't one of you just go ahead and jump into, when we use the word strain, kind of try to define that for the people listening. What exactly is a strain? And then we'll compare it to our CBD stuff a little bit later, but maybe use a comparison like to some other product, like an isolate product, and so forth and so on. So why don't you guys jump in there and just try to say, here's our best definition of what we mean when we use the word strain.
Wow.
Go.
You want to lead out on that, Rich?
I certainly could. Yeah, so strains, I could talk about all this stuff for forever. I don't want to hog all the time. Strains are really, when people walk into a dispensary, and I look forward to someday doing that myself. Here in Florida, of course, we don't really have that opportunity because we don't have the opportunity to deal with flower. But if you go to one of the legal the legal states and they have a dispensary that lets you buy flower, they have jars and jars and jars of medical cannabis flowers on the shelf, and it's very popular for people. They usually open up the jar and let you stick your nose in there and smell those different strains. And those names, which are, let's face it, pretty wacky, all these different crazy strain names that these growers come up with, that used to be pretty significant, because you'd walk in and you'd be looking for a particular type of medical cannabis. And the reason why was this was known, like, for instance, AC/DC is known for its particular effect. So as we've learned more about the plant, we've gone into, why, with chemistry, why does this particular strain do what it does? We've discovered that, and I say we as in scientists have discovered that it's the mixture of the various cannabinoids and terpenes that identify our particular strain. But within a strain, it's pretty interesting that you can take. There was a study that was done in California. And they took, I don't remember what strain it was, but they took a particular strain of cannabis. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say it was OG Kush, and they grew it, out there in the mountains of California in the Emerald Triangles, where they grow a lot of stuff. But they took the same exact genetics of. They took clones from one plant. Or seeds. I'm sorry, it was seeds. And they planted these seeds from the same plant. They planted them in 3 different places in the same county. And then they grew these plants to maturity. They harvested them, and then they did some tests on them. And they discovered that, in fact, the terpene profiles were quite a bit different from one batch of these particular plants to the other. And they looked at it. They were fed a little bit differently. They had, whether it was the actual specifics, chemistry of the soil, that we know that affects it, the amount of sun versus shade, the amount of water they get, probably temperature, all of those things, pollination. But, of course, they shouldn't be pollinated, because if they're, female, they shouldn't have any of that. Right. But in other words, a growing environment and the nutrition can dramatically alter the chemistry profile. So there was a very simple illustration of the fact that a strain name really doesn't mean as much as a lot of people think it does. It's really the chemistry of that strain, or that particular sample, that's important. So when these are general names, we use these generalized names. We have a generalized profile that's built around that particular medical cannabis strain, but that's going to vary quite a bit from one batch to another. So we have to kind of generalize a lot in our business. So, for instance, with AC/DC, if we look at that as a medical cannabis strain, it's known for being very high in CBD, and that CBD, of course, moderates some of the effects of THC, which won't go into that right at the moment, but it's very high in myrcene. And myrcene is one of the myrcene is in a lot of strains, but myrcene is a very it's in indica mostly. It comes in indica strains, and it's also found in mangoes, and it has a very relaxing type of effect. It's going to cause you to be more restful, a little bit more chill, and of course CBD in and of itself does that as well. So when we look at and if we contrast that with pinene, when you walk into a forest and you take a big deep breath and you smell that pine coming into your sinuses, you're actually getting the benefits of pinene, which is also found in cannabis. And so pinene strains, that's a very alerting terpene. So it kind of focuses you. It makes you more sharp. That's how I remember. Pinene, sharp needles, pine needles, very alerting kind of a terpene. So the levels of pinene, as opposed to myrcene, or in combination with those two, create those different strains. And to throw one more in, you have linalool. And linalool is also found in lavender, also kind of a relaxing, very healing kind of strain. It's good for nighttime, for sleepy. So the strains that have linalool in them are going to be more prone to really probably around bedtime. So that's really the difference. Is it's not so much the names, it's the chemical composition. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to approximate a good average of those strains with the chemistry, and we bring all that together minus the THC, because we can't sell THC in this state or across the state. So if you live in a state where you can get medical cannabis, then you're fortunate, but a lot of us don't, or we don't qualify, or whatever. We feel that these products try to bring the best of the medical cannabis world into a product that is actually legal in all 50 states.
Sure. Let me try to summarize. So when we're talking strain here, we're talking about, first of all, a whole plant perspective, as opposed to, sometimes we'll pull, you can pull the CBD cannabinoid out. We call that an isolate. So some products out there people may be encountering, if you look, you want to check and see if it's a full spectrum product. Does it use the entire plant and all the additional cannabinoids, flavonoids, terpenoids, and all of that, or is it a CBD isolate? And, of course, it's our opinion that you always want to try to stay with that full spectrum approach, because we don't know how all of those, we know a lot, but we don't know how all of those things operate synergistically together to bring the effects that so many people are talking about. So first of all, you have that full spectrum approach. We're using the whole plant. But secondly, as we get into these individual names, essentially those are, for us, they're terpene profiles. So, for example, with AC/DC, you're going to have a certain terpene profile that's there. Let me pull that up real quick. So in AC/DC, the main terpene profile that's there is myrcene. You may have to help me out with some of these, Rich. Nerolidol, humulene, and delta-3 carnine. So those four major terpenes are going to be present over and above maybe other ones. And each of those bringing a little bit of different healing properties to the mix, along with the CBD that kind of complements it. So when we're talking strains, we're talking about these additional terpene profiles that are associated with these particular medical marijuana strains, but that it is important to realize that when you use the word strain, not an exact science, because we know growing conditions can, there's no way to just completely recreate from a chemical analysis, tit for tat, so to speak, an exact replica or clone of one strain, on and on. So we're trying to hit just basically that general terpene profile that's bringing all those benefits. That's right. Is that a reasonable summation?
It is.
Correct.
And that's one of the biggest challenges in the medical cannabis growing world is consistency. The only way you can really do that is to have exact conditions, and that's really only done in indoor grows, which, of course, there's a lot of debate about that, and we don't know much about that, and I do not know that much about that, but I know that that's, from a medical perspective, we'd love to have consistency, but cannabis it's not so easily tamed. We can technically produce roughly the same thing. Obviously, genetics are huge, and we're going to end up, if we have identical genetics, then you're going to have AC/DC at some level. But from batch to batch, you're going to have a little bit different mix of the different cannabinoids. You're going to see more or less of certain terpenes, even though the general profile should be fairly consistent.
Right. Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, yeah. Actually, I was sitting thinking about this idea of, and trying to put everything into context in my mind of what you're bringing up, the points you're bringing up. And, these plants have so many factors in them, so many medical factors. And I don't remember at this point, I've heard some people say, there's over 400 components to this plant. There's 700 components to this plant. Everybody has kind of a different position on it. But we do know, aside from CBDs, there's plant esters, there's lactones, there's ketones, there's fatty acids, plant steroids. So the idea is we're trying to get as much of that into the body as we can. And aside from being consistent, the idea in Full Spectrum is to get as much of that plant material ingested into our bodies. And that'll bring, we want to bring stress levels down. We want to reduce cellular inflammation. We want to slow oxidation. We want to create homeostasis. Those are the things that bring that calming sensation, that calming feeling, or overall well-being, as we often hear in this. And so, I liken it to just a personal story. We have a local restaurant in town, and they grow basil out in front of the restaurant in these large pots. And on a warm summer day, you can walk by there, and you can smell the basil, and you begin to smell it to the point you taste it on your tongue. That's those terpenes or terpenoids coming out of that plant, based on the heat of the day. And so those are the things that how do you get as much of that plant material, into the human body to do what it's designed to do by nature? And so, that's the idea of bringing the whole plant material, the full spectrum, and putting it with the CBDs. Again, CBDs are cannabinoids. They are CBD and THC are both terpenoids derived from terpenes. So everything that we're doing is that, to use the term that the community uses, is the entourage effect. Getting as much in there as you can to stimulate as many senses as you can.
Yeah, if you see that term entourage, for those listening, you can think of it along the same lines of synergy. We've talked about that already. In other words, that's the sum being greater than, or the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. Is that how it goes, guys? In other words, you can take each of those things individually, but when you put them together, they create something really special. And so that's what we're trying to do.
I'd like to tag on to that just as a point of, I guess, education. Western medicine has a single molecule approach. They like to try to isolate, bring things down to the lowest common denominator, find one element, one component, and try to target very targeted medicine. Well, when we try to do that with cannabis, what they've discovered, and there has been some cannabis medicine developed, there continues to be studies in that regard, and one thing they found out was when they took out for instance, the THC or the CBD, and they just took that one component out of the plant. Therapeutically, cannabis has, most medications have a bell curve of effectiveness, and cannabis in particular has a bell curve. So you take too little, it's not effective, and then you'll see that curve kind of ramp up and go up like a mountain, and then you get that peak where you got maximum efficacy, and then it starts to go back down the other side, which means if you take too much, it can actually be less effective than getting the right dose. So we always want to target the minimum effective dose. What's the least amount you can take to get the maximum benefit? So we learned that the window of effectiveness, how wide that point of maximum effectiveness is very, very narrow with the single molecule approach of just single molecule CBD. It has a very narrow window of efficacy. But when we put it in the context of the full spectrum, all the other terpenes are there, the minor cannabinoids are there, some of the natural the fats and the other elements of the plant. When you put that in a natural oil environment, that window of efficacy opens right up, and it becomes much, much wider, which means that it's easier to find an effective dose, and it actually becomes more effective as medicine. So that was very fascinating to me.
Well, and that's one of our mottos here. We have several of them. We're going to talk about one in just a second: all health and no high. But the other one that we use a lot is, nature still making the very best medicines. So it really is this idea of, we're made from the same elements of everything else in nature. and that God or nature, the universe, whatever your particular belief system allows for, has filled the earth, with all this wonderful stuff that can not only complement our health and supplement our health, but truly restore it and bring it back to this place of vitality. And I think one of the trip-ups for people sometimes in the approach is, when you take a pill and it's a drive-through mentality. You take a pill and you want that effect right now, and you get a lot of those kinds of effects with CBD for sure. We have tons and tons of testimonies of that. But the other side of it we have is where over long-term use, where people are using it kind of as a supplement, like a daily, Rich calls it his daily vitamin, as they're using it kind of as this vitamin, and you really do see these long-term effects then begin to come into play. One just point, I'll just because we were having the conversation the other day about our dogs, we give our golden retrievers CBD oil because she has very, very bad hip dysplasia and had it since she was like a puppy at 6 months. And I mean, so bad that there were just days she can't even lift her hind end up off of the floor. And so now every time we give her CBD to treat that symptom, okay, the symptom of the hip dysplasia, not being able to get up, being in pain, those are the symptoms. It just, bam, it works. It's like a wonder drug, right? And so, we talked about that. Well, the other day I had a family member actually who's sent it to a friend of theirs up in Canada for use with their dog. And she was telling me the great results he's had with it. And so I got to talking about Bailey, and it came to my mind as I was talking, because she said, we were talking about dosage, and she's like, do you give her that every day? And I'm like, oh, no. We only give it to her as needed. And then I realized that we've been giving that to her fewer and further between. In other words, what I didn't recognize, we're giving it to her every time she has a flare-up, but it just dawned on me yesterday, you know what? We're starting to give her that now, whereas we were doing it once every other day. Now we're doing it, once every 1 or 2 weeks. And sometimes we've probably gone as many as 3 weeks with her. I want to jump right into this one common concern we always get when people start looking at strains or any of our products. You'll always hear, will this make me high? So I want to be clear that our products do not contain any THC. Or I guess better said, our last analysis was 0.04% at the raw level, and of course then we formulate out from there. So that probably adds at least another digit to it, another decimal point. But these products, when you compare them to the medical marijuana strain, the very first thing to realize that is not there. And one way it doesn't compare, when someone says, will this give me the same effect as the marijuana strain? The first thing we can say without hesitation is, well, it won't give you the THC.
Yeah, that's right, and it is a question we get a lot. I had it from a customer on a phone call the other day. He's looking for the same effects of Durban poison, and he's familiar with Durban poison. He's wondering how many of the effects he'll get, and he knew that there wasn't THC, but he's wondering what he'll experience. And my answer to that question is, honestly, we're not sure. The reason why is because everybody's different. Everybody's got a different endocannabinoid tone. That's another word that we toss out a lot, and we need to have a call really just about the endocannabinoid system, the human endocannabinoid system. But the fact is we have this system in our bodies that regulates pretty much everything, certainly in our immune system. These receptors are all over our bodies, and without going into detail, everybody's is different, which is why it's, and you touched on this earlier, Raj, that it's not take two and call us in the morning. This is sometimes you would think that, even for body mass, normally with medication, it's, you have a certain dose per kilogram or whatever. Sometimes little children have to take bigger amounts than great big football players to be efficacious. So there is a very much, cannabis is personal medicine, and we have to, when it comes down to what will I affect or how much should I take, Those are questions we get. The two biggest questions we get: which of your products do I take, and how much do I take? The answer to that question is, well, get enough CBD in your body to find that minimum effective dose. And we don't know what that is. You're going to have to find that out for yourself. So start with 3 or 4 drops a couple of times a day and work up from there. And if in fact you determine that the product is not working for you the way that you'd like to, well, let's look at which product you bought. A lot of times people will pick one of these, one of the strains, because there are lower priced items. And the reason why is there's only 100 milligrams of CBD in there. Now, these are very effective we've gotten some great testimonies even last week about how effective our strains are for some people. But for others that are dealing with more serious health issues, they may need more milligrams of CBD. So, but they may want to take advantage of those terpenes. So there's a term that I like to toss around, and I've got a new one that I'll toss out there.
I have that on my notes. Rich's new term.
Yeah. So bending the effects. That's what terpenes do. They bend the effect of the CBD in a particular direction. Because they're that entourage effect. The new term that I heard from somebody else, but actually they were talking about how terpenes direct the trajectory of the CBD or the THC, which try to say that 10 times real fast.
Right.
So it's a tongue twister, but it does create a picture. That's what. So as far as what products should I take and how much should I take. We don't know, but I like to make sure that people are getting enough CBD. So you can try a strain. They do work for instance, anxiety. They work great for anxiety for a lot of people. Again, there's an inherent calming effect, and we've got daytime and nighttime strains, and even those are not hard and fast. We've had some people say, gee, I took the nighttime, the Granddaddy Purple is a nighttime strain, and it kept me awake. Well, how much did you take? You might have had more than you needed, or maybe that's just an activating type of chemical for you. So we're not sure what your effects are. What we're pretty confident in is that, number one, you need some cannabinoids in your body. If you're a human being, your body creates cannabinoids, and cannabis they're named after the cannabis plant when they discovered them back in the 70s. And as we get older, especially when we get above 40, 50 years old, you start to feel your age. Even if you're not experiencing any big medical difficulties, my personal feeling, and I'm not alone in this, is that everybody needs to supplement their endocannabinoid system. And the best way to do that is to have to take your vitamin CBD. Just take a little bit each day. Those strains are great for that. And if you're dealing with something more serious, well, you probably want to go ahead and grab one of our higher potency MCT oil products, the 500 or the 750, because you can determine your dose, and we can help you with dosage and determining how many milligrams you're getting per drop. But if you want to bend the effect of that CBD, those terpenes, the strains line, are very good for doing that, and you can take them together. So anyway, I'll let.
Any comments there, Jess? You've been a while.
No, I was thinking I don't really want to go too far off down the trail on the endocannabinoid system, but the main overall job that we know that the endocannabinoid system does is to bring balance to the whole body, that homeostasis, and then on top of that, or maybe rather an offshoot of that would be to help regulate stress hormones. And that's something that we don't really think about too much in society today, but particularly in America. It used to be the term was burnout. Now we might call it, adrenal fatigue, things like that. But it's almost at an epidemic proportion in America. We have so much stimulus. So we're kind of taking our body and our senses to the edge all the time. Caffeines and sugars and all the stuff you mentioned briefly about changing your diet, but all of these things are factors for stress. High traffic, you may live in a city area where there's a lot of traffic noise, things like that, and things that we've learned to kind of filter out, but they're a constant stress to us, to our body in general. And so the endocannabinoid system's main job, and obviously there's multiple jobs to that, but the main job is to bring all that into balance and have that harmony again. And I think anybody listening would agree that they just want some peace, some peace and quiet every now and then. So
I know my wife would agree with you.
Yeah, being a father of 3 children, I can certainly find myself in that place. And so again, having this entourage effect, having this full spectrum CBD oil, you find that you really do. And again, who can tell you what is the right amount for you? Everyone's body is different. Obviously, that's not going to be the same for a 150-pound man as it would be for a 350-pound man. And and that doesn't necessarily mean that the 350-pound man needs more. He may, in fact, need less. But it all depends on his level of deficiency, if you will. And so by doing that, you're stimulating that system, and you're finding that balance again. And it's amazing to me. I mean, as long as we've been doing this, Rich and I, we still get a kick out of watching somebody, take their first hit off of that vape pen or whatever, and you just kind of sit back and watch their face and watch their shoulders and all that, as I said before, and that you kind of see that stress melt off of them. And I don't think that there's anybody that's listening that could say, I need less of that. We all want more. We all want more stresslessness.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Jess. And something interesting along those lines is that, the endocannabinoid system, because it touches so many areas of your body. I know that because of that, it made me a little bit cynical in the beginning when I began to hear about cannabis as medicine. Because I just figured whatever. I was pretty much pro marijuana. It was not something that I did. But when I heard cannabis as medicine, I just immediately thought of, well, that's just a trick, a little bit of trickery there to get it legalized. Yeah, an excuse to get high. There you go, an excuse to get high. And one of the reasons I felt that way is because when you really start looking into it as a medicine, you see, oh, well, it's good for acne. It can cure cancer. It's good for irritable bowel syndrome. It's good for anxiety. It's good for chronic pain. Well, my gosh, I think the list of things that it doesn't do anything for would be easier to just post that list because the list is so long. And so when you see that, you can't help but go, yeah, whatever, because it honestly does look like, a snake oil kind of proposition. Sure. But it really is, and I'm just making a pitch here for those of you listening to learn more about the endocannabinoid system, because there's where all this really begins to come alive for you. But because that endocannabinoid system is a homeostatic system, and it's literally in every cell. It's even, you have receptors at the cellular level, and in every organ, even your skin, and it's everywhere, which is why so many different conditions are affected by it, because your immune system, your endocannabinoid system, it has everything to do literally with everything. So that's why when people begin to supplement with cannabis therapeutics, they begin seeing all kinds of things. We got a testimony, if I remember correct. It may have been the Durban poison, I don't remember, but it was the guy got it for chronic pain. And so he got one of our strains for chronic pain. He used it, and I was a little worried when I first started reading the review because it didn't do nothing. I got this for chronic pain, didn't do a thing. But here's what I did notice. I've been on all this medication, had really advanced GERD, and I noticed that my GERD had went away. So, and where I was leading it. Yeah, it really is. So one of the things we do tell people is when you start, everybody comes with a certain condition typically. That's why you're here, right? Because I got this or I got that. I'm looking for this result. But as you begin the titration process, really beginning to take a small dose and go to a little bit higher, paying attention all the while to your whole entire body, not just the particular symptom or condition you came to the table with. Because amazingly enough, CBD is awesome for people with chronic pain, but interestingly, for some, they can't seem to find that dose, and they don't get quite as much, help with it. So certainly not a cure-all, but it is just a beautiful way that it interacts with the whole body. But I was went into that tirade to really simply say this. Of all of our customers that have purchased CBD oils for chronic pain or whatever the various different conditions, and sometimes it doesn't seem to quite fit the bill for all of them, and many of them it does. But one thing I have never seen is I've never seen a customer purchase this for anxiety and it not work. I'm not aware of one customer yet that has taken this for stress relief and anxiety relief and not just simply said, "Man, that's a game changer for me."
Let me interject there just a second, Raj. I actually just watched. There was a documentary on what is that called? The Wealth Channel. It's about medical cannabis as medicine or something like that, and it's a 3-part series. I watched it sometime before, or at least I watched one part of it. It's all about CBD mostly. And this I'm trying to remember the doctor's name. He's one of the leading cannabis docs out there in California. But he said they did a pretty significant study, and they said one thing they found out, which blew their minds, was 100% of the anxiety patients that took CBD experienced relief. 100%.
Yeah.
That just was amazing to me.
Wow.
That's clinical research. That's not just us. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so why don't we, guys, we covered a lot of territory. Again, I appreciate both of your time. We're all busy. But I thought maybe a good way to kind of end the call would be, because a lot of the people that are listening, they really are looking for something. They've come up empty. Many of them have tried big pharma stuff, opioids, whatever. And oftentimes they're here many times it's like a last resort and looking for something when nothing else will work. One of the best parts of what we're doing are the testimonies that come in all the time. So here's what I'd like, maybe to close out. Just share maybe a story that's come in over the last week or so of something. And because we're going kind of long, make it as brief as you can. But just share a testimony that you've either had in chat or that's come across our email or someone shared with you.
Well, I'll go first. Rich and I originally came together with this idea of starting this company. To me, I wanted the very best product that we could produce, period. And I also told him, and I don't know if he remembers these exact words, but I said, if we get to a point where we're no longer helping people, I don't want to be a part of it. That was the in my mind's eye, that was the vision for where we want to be, the very best product that we could produce, as well as helping as many people as we could. And having suffered, chronic illness myself, having a heart for them. And so to give my personal testimony, it's kind of neat for me to see, I run into people all the time that are using our product locally that I didn't know they were using it. And they'll say, this, help with this, help with that. But one real interesting testimony to me is a man purchased a bottle from us. I know him personally, and he actually took it to a friend who was suffering with cancer. And, I didn't see him for a while and didn't know anything else about the story, and then later ran into him, and he said, by the way, I wanted to tell you that my friend is taking your product, and the last time I saw her, she was in the bed. And he said, the other day I saw her, and she was pulling weeds in her flower bed. And I thought, there wasn't an end to that. It wasn't that the cancer was in remission. It wasn't that there was a cure-all. It wasn't. But to go from the bed to pulling weeds, and again attribute that to our product, to me was powerful. It was that thing of that keep on keeping on kind of mentality that we are actually making a difference in somebody's life. And I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. Again, this is secondhand information. But to me, it was just kind of, a moment there where I said it's worth every bit of the time and effort that we've put into it to this point.
Yeah. That's good, man. Thanks. How about you, Mr. Carey?
Yeah, well, my personal testimony about this stuff, I have a little bit of a arthritis in my upper cervical spine, and I have a bulging disc in my lower back from being stupid when I was in my 20s, and it's plagued me my whole life. But so I feel, aches and pains of life, but I feel it especially in my back and my neck and my hips and my knees and a lot of other places. And I just turned 60 this year, so it's pretty consistent that if I don't take my CBDs, and sometimes I get busy and I forget, I always have a bottle or a vape sitting around, but if I don't take it every day, if I go 2 or 3 days and I just don't, for whatever reason, I'm just busy and I don't take it, all of a sudden, all these little aches and pains just start creeping back in, and it's just it's pretty consistent. It's consistent enough that I can tell when I'm not taking my meds. And when I say meds, I'm talking about my CBDs, my supplements.
Your CBD.
Obviously, we're prohibited by the FDA from making those claims, but the reality is, look, this works. It's true. Nature's medicine, and it works. And I just heard back from an old friend in Idaho that he had bought some of our 250 oil, which is kind of usually the one that I take, but as a supplement. And it's he said he's blown away. He's taken it for a week now. He said, I feel better than I felt for a long time. He said it's just exactly like you said. The aches and pains aren't there anymore. I'm sleeping better. He said I just feel chill now. I just have a greater sense of peace. And he said I'm truly blown away at how good I feel taking this stuff. And I'll share one word story that we just got in, which you guys are familiar with, but the short version is Brianna from Utah wrote to us, and she had a preface to this thing. She found us. She was really excited because we showed all the qualities of the strain, so she bought some Durban poison. She said that she bought it to combat her stress and her depression and the fatigue that had come from basically postpartum depression. She'd been suffering for over a year now with postpartum depression. Didn't want to go outside, didn't want to exercise, was depressed all the time, just felt bad, just not a very good life. So she'd heard about CBD. She found us. She came in. She bought some Durban poison. She says, quote, I was absolutely blown away at how effective it was on just the first dose. I haven't taken any antidepressants that day. It was understandably feeling very lethargic and down because of it. Took the recommended dose of 3 to 5 drops, only taking 3 to start, thinking that I would definitely need more. But in less than 20 minutes, I could physically feel my anxiousness and sadness lift. I was so surprised that I was able to feel it with the minimum dosage and on the first time trying it. She talked to all of her friends and family about it who she'd been talking about CBD. She says, I've been continually taking about 3 to 5 drops twice a day, and it is amazing how effective it is. I don't feel the weight in my chest hold me back anymore. The intense feeling of doubt and stress. I can't even think about. I can even think about doing something. She says I have more desire and energy to play with my daughter and be the mother I want to be. I will never go back to taking antidepressants in my life. Taking something that's natural also helps me stay in the healthy plan of putting good things in my body. I eat better. I drink more water. I no longer have trouble getting outside and exercising. I feel like myself again. Thank you so much, Green Flower Botanicals, for providing me with a product that quite literally changed my life. You have a lifelong customer in me. So that's why we do it. Right there. That's you just it's just amazing. And Raj, I would like to you shared this with me. I don't know if you'd want to share that testimony about your relative who's been fighting cancer.
Yeah, in that approach, obviously the milligrams are much higher. So he's doing a regimen of 100 milligrams per day. And he has recurring. He's already been through 1 round of chemo and for lung cancer, and he came back with 2 spots on his lungs, a spot on the liver, 2 spots, 1 on each hip, and then 2 spots on his spine. So it's really spread, and he's been It's been a couple months, right, Rich? I mean, do you remember how the orders have come through? I think it's been a couple months.
Seems like 2 to 3 months. Yeah, probably 3 months. I'm thinking
3 months. Yeah, I think it is probably closer to 3 months. I think they're on they're coming up on their fourth order, so probably coming up on 4 months. But yeah, I was over there the other day, and he said he had I guess a CAT scan or a PET scan one, and that all the tumors have shrunk by 50%. And so,
Wow.
Wow. Now, is all that due to just the CBD? I honestly don't know. And one thing we're always cautious about, we get people calling in with cancer all the time. And we're always very careful to say, we're not telling you, and nor should you let anyone else tell you, that CBD or even medical marijuana for that matter will cure cancer. What we can tell you is that a lot of the tests are amazing in animals, and that there are cases where that has been the case. But what you're looking for, if you're going to approach cannabis therapy for cancer, is it helps with nausea, it helps with neuropathy, it helps with appetite, it helps with blood pressure, it helps with so many things. Another cool thing about it is it increases the efficacy of opioids. So if you're on really strong pain medicines because your body's riddled with cancer, which is the case, when you're on morphine and Dilaudid, and these are very, very powerful opioids, and the problem is they come with a host of side effects. So from constipation to brain fog to just all kinds of things. And oftentimes it's not the cancer as much as it's the therapies, the chemotherapy and all the opioids that are making you miserable. And so if for no other reason, I would say, if people are on a cancer regimen or they're on chronic pain and have taking any kinds of opioids, absolutely get some CBD, because it increases the efficacy of the opioid, which means now you can take less of it, which means you're getting less of those detrimental side effects. And now, we're talking quality of life, and that's what you just got through talking about, both of you, when the lady's now pulling weeds in her garden, whereas before she was in the bed. Or my gosh, we all just, lit up and cried. I shared it with my wife, and, we all have big families, but for this lady to, be able to be the mom she wants to be to her little child, because, she's this postpartum depression, it's so devastating, So anyway, yeah, I mean, of course, we've gone much longer than, which will always be the case with us, I'm sure, on this call than we intended. And hopefully we've given you, those that are listening, some actionable information. Thanks for hanging out with us a little bit. We do have a live chat system, and certainly if you hit us up through the contact section of our website, we do always respond. Sometimes it may take a day or so because we're quite busy here and things are happening around here at Green Flowers. But we want to hear your stories, and we want to do our best to help you get the product that's kind of right for you with where you're at. So anything else, guys, before we just say goodbye to everybody?
I don't think so.
Nope.
Sing a song, maybe? No? Good. I've heard you guys sing, so we appreciate you resisting the urge to do that. All right. Well, I guess with that, then, again, we appreciate your support, appreciate you guys listening. And this is our very first time out the gate with one of these calls. We look forward to doing some more of that. I guess I should, unfortunately, have to end with this. None of the statements that have been made on this broadcast have been evaluated by the FDA, and we do advise against taking anything that's been said on this broadcast in place of the actual care of a physician and proper medical guidance. So, of course, we always have to say that to make sure and I also think it's important to realize we are not trying to make claims beyond that which are reasonable or the experience we've had with our customers. But at the same time, we all believe it's very important to take personal responsibility when it comes to our medical care. And we certainly think you're well advised to look to nature in all of with forms, not just cannabis, but other wonderful products that are out there and available, and just begin to get your body realigned and synced up with what God intended. So anyway, thanks for your time. And guys, thanks a lot. And we'll look forward to the next call. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rod. Take care, guys.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.